Anybody planning summer vacation yet? Anybody doing that yet? Well, I'm planning, we've been planning, we usually go to the Outer Banks, North Carolina. Anybody go to the Outer Banks or been to the Outer Banks? Some people? Nobody? Yeah. Okay, just checking. So one of the places I like to go, the rest of my family doesn't like to go on the Outer Banks, is a little town called Corolla, North Carolina, which is all the way at the northern end of the banks before the road runs out. And you need a four-wheel drive vehicle if you go beyond Corolla in that part of the Outer Banks. And is anybody there going to Corolla or the Outer Bank? You going to Corolla? Every year. There you go. All right, so good. You work right in. So I got to tell you about something. So if anybody here ever goes to Corolla, and anybody I hear going to Corolla, I tell them about this place. This is the place I want you to stop. Philly Steak Subs, all right? Now, see, you know what I'm talking about. So so we share this experience, right? So when you go there, if you ever go up that way, or even if you're in another part of Outer Banks and you travel up there one day, stop here for lunch, and I'm going to tell you why. Usually I advise people, and you know this, when you travel, eat local food. You don't get a Maryland crab cake in Ohio. I mean, it just doesn't work, right? You wouldn't necessarily get a Philly steak sub in Corolla, North Carolina, but if you ever go, you stop and you get a Philly cheesesteak at this shop because it is one of the best Philly cheesesteaks I have ever had in my life outside of Philadelphia. And I share this with people all the time because I can remember going in there, we stopped there for lunch on our way in one day, and and there was a line to wait for these subs. And I started to wait, we waited, and we got them, and I'm like, oh, now I know it. The melted cheese and all the gooey stuff, and then the nice, fresh, hard roll on the outside with the gooey on the inside, and I just loved it. It was like one of the best. It was like a spiritual experience, to be honest with you. So I had this experience, right? And so it was a good thing. And I learned that the reason that these subs are so good is because the family is from Philly. And they ship the rolls from the place that makes the Philly cheesesteak rolls in Philadelphia, and they ship them to this store. And so they know how to make a Philly cheesesteak sub. So you get that authentic Philadelphia food in Corolla, North Carolina. And I had a great experience, right? And why do I share that experience with people every time I hear that somebody's going there? Why do I share that experience with people? Because it's good. It's something I'm excited about. It's something that I want to share with other people. I want other people to have the same experience that I have. And I know, so I share it with them naturally. I didn't think, well, I don't know I didn't go, I'm not sure I should tell you this or not, and I'm not sure, can we close the door? Can we just talk quietly about these cheesesteaks? I don't do that. But isn't that what we do with our faith? Is our faith something good? Is it a good experience? Is God good to us? Have we experienced God's grace? And if I've experienced something good, I want to share it with other people. I want to tell other people about what God has done in my life, and that I want to tell people about my spiritual experience, right? So today, we're looking at the discipleship pathway. We've been talking about being rooted in the life-giving message of Jesus Christ, rooting people in discipleship, and what mature discipleship looks like. And so we've been looking at this discipleship pathway. And if you want to guess, which of these 6 areas do you think we're going to talk about today? 3 o'clock, right, witness. So to be a witness is to share the truth about something, to testify to someone. Sometimes I say in the sermons, can I get a witness? And Paul says, there you go, all right, good. So, by the way, Paul and I planned that. We planned that out. Paul's been asking me, when are you going to ask for a witness? And I said, don't worry, I got you this week, Paul. So we talk about those types of things. What do we think? We're testifying, we're telling the truth about God's good grace in our lives. And so we've been talking about that. So we all at different places, and remember, we're in each of those areas, we may be at different places in our own journeys. So like last week, we talked about worship, and so we might be really that's an area we've got down pretty good. And then we move over to witness and we go, I got some room to grow here. So let's take a look at the different stages of growth in witnessing. So the first one is not seeking. If I am not seeking to be a witness, I have nothing to share. And it could be because I have nothing to share. I have not yet experienced God's grace. I have not yet had a experience of God at work in my life, and so I don't have anything to share. So I can't really be a witness. I can't tell people about cheesesteaks if I've not experienced cheesesteaks. It's just not something I have to share. Or I may have the experience, but I'm reluctant to say anything. I kind of hide it. I don't really say much about it, and so I just choose not to. And this is an area where, so I could be a disciple, but I could maybe not be seeking to be a witness as a disciple. It may not be a part of what I see as a part of my discipleship. The next phase is when I'm starting to seek. I'm not sure what it means to be a witness. I don't know. I may need to learn more about it. But I'm also looking for an example of a consistent witness. How many of us are looking for someone that can just be a great example to us, both in actions and words, that we want to emulate, that we want to follow, someone that we go, that's somebody I can look to. And really, ultimately, Jesus is to be that example for us. But other times we need people in our lives that can just be good examples of witnesses that we can start to say, all right, what are you doing? How can I grow? And I'm seeking to grow in this area. And then when I'm responding, it's that I have this desire in my response. I have a desire to tell other people about what God's doing in my life. When I experience it, so as soon as I experience that Philly cheesesteak in Corolla, North Carolina, my immediate reaction is, I got to tell people about this place, right? I became an evangelist for that sub shop, right? Because I wanted to tell other people about it. That was my response. And when we're responding to God's good grace in our lives, we want to tell others about it. And then as I follow God more, I'm starting to think about what would I say to people? As I'm following Jesus, I'm thinking this. I'm thinking I am prepared to share my own faith story in an intimate group. So I'm looking at ways to prepare and be thinking about ahead of time, what would I say to somebody? How would I say it? If I was stuck in an elevator for 3 minutes with somebody and they asked me, what do you think about God? What would I say? How would I share my faith? What would I say to them? So I actually think about it and plan to be a witness and begin to think about it. I often encourage people in small groups. We talk around here about when you're in a small group, take some opportunities to share your faith experience around the group, because that helps us begin to articulate our story when we're people who are not in our groups or not in our circles. And then when I'm committed to this area of my life, I am committing to this. I am a consistent in being a living witness. My actions and my words line up. So often when it comes to being faith sharing, I see people who are like, just want to say, all right, I'll just be a good example and I won't say anything. And I'll just let my example be my witness. And the problem with just doing that is that nobody ever knows who we're witnessing to, because we never tell them. And then I've got other people who like to say things about God and tell people about God, but the behavior, the actions in their life are not lining up with what they're telling people, right? And so we think it's not an either or. It's both of those together, because everybody's looking for that consistent witness. And you and I are called as mature disciples to be the consistent witness, that our actions and our words line up together, and those two things become a powerful witness or a powerful way to share our faith, because our words are backed up with our behavior, and vice versa. Our behavior backed up, so it's together. We have to have those together, not one or the other. So, but we get reluctant to share our faith, do we not? And I think part of the reason we're reluctant sometimes is because, one, we don't always see it as politically correct. Number two, I think, though, the bigger issue is that other Christians, well-meaning Christians, have gone and shared their faith in ways that have turned people off to faith. So they've done things, they've said things, and part of the reason is because they've taken this faith sharing to a whole new level. So let me go back to cheesesteaks, because I know we're all hungry and thinking about them now. So what if I said to you, you have to try this cheesesteak? If you don't try this cheesesteak, you are going to regret it. If you don't eat some of this cheesesteak, you are missing out in your life. In fact, I'm going to hold you accountable. If you come back from Corolla and you tell me you didn't stop and get a cheesesteak, well, we're not friends anymore, right? How would you feel about stopping and get a cheesesteak now, right? How many people, when I first told the story, were like, I want to go get a cheesesteak, right? Right? Because I just shared my experience with you. I shared my faith in cheesesteaks with you. And then you said, hey, I want to try that out, right? But if I'm trying to force it on you, if I'm trying to guilt you into it, if I'm trying to coerce you into going and getting a cheesesteak, you don't want to do it, do you? You start to back off. You go, wow, that guy's a little obsessed about cheesesteaks. And isn't that our reaction to some Christians? Those guys, they're a little radical over there, right? And that's our response. And so we back away. And so no longer are we being an effective witness in sharing our faith when that happens. And so we don't want to be those people, right? But don't use those other people as an excuse not to just share God's goodness in your life. You can still do that without being the radical person. You can still share your faith when people can have a good response. In fact, I think it's even more important that we do that, because I know that we'll do it in a way that'll be helpful for people and not turn people off to the faith. So it's even more important that those of us who share our goodness of God's grace, that we do it so that the other people aren't the only Christian witness people see in their lives, like the Starbucks cup guy or whoever it is, right? So actually, Paul writes to Timothy in that passage we heard and gives us some good advice on how to be a good communicator, on how to be a good communicator of our faith and how to communicate our faith and conduct ourselves as we talk about our faith with other people. And Paul gives a lot of good advice to Timothy about doing this. The first thing to point out in that passage is that when Paul says to Timothy, look, when you're doing this, you just present the truth. And it's God who grants them the ability to change their mind or not. It's God's the one that does the converting. So our job is not to, what I'm saying is our job is not to convert people. That is the Holy Spirit's role. Our job is just simply to share our faith. It is God who comes and works with that faith sharing and changes people's lives. Our job is not to change people, coerce people, make people believe. That's not our job. God will do that work. We need to trust God, that God is working in another person's life or other people's lives. We need to trust God's work. We just need to be faithful to being that witness for God. Paul says that to Timothy, that it's God that does the work. It's God who makes that person grow and is a part of their growth. So when a farmer goes out and plants a field of crops, does the farmer make the crop grow? No. God makes the crop grow. The way God has designed things, the way God has ordered things, those things are designed to grow. So I want you to think about it, as we've talked about before, when we're talking about rooting people in the life giving, when we're talking about rooting, being rooted, we're talking about just what are the things we can do to help people grow in their faith, like a farmer helps crops grow and plant seeds and help them grow. But ultimately, here's the thing. People are already designed to connect with God. They have that in them. It's not our job to put it in them. Let God do that work. And so I kind of came up with this way of helping us understand how, because witnessing and sharing our faith is not only about us being rooted, but it's about helping somebody else be rooted. It's about somebody else's growth, spiritual growth, that I'm helping them with. So like a farmer, you and I have to be aware of what stage this person is in, because if we're all at different stages in our own journeys, when we encounter people who aren't Christians or may be Christians, they're at different stages in their journey as well, right? And so we have to become aware, where is this person? And how do you find out where a person is in their spiritual life? How do you find that out? You listen, right? Yeah. You ask questions, you listen to them, you hear their story, you do things. So that's part of that. And then as you listen, you have to, like a farmer, the first thing is to prepare the soil. That sometimes I am being a witness, my witness is not, converting them or getting them to pray a prayer. My witness is helping to unpack some misunderstandings about the Christian faith or misconceptions about the Christian faith. And so what I'm doing is I'm helping prepare the soil. I'm turning over the soil. I'm saying, hey, you got some misconceptions in here about Christianity that I want to help you understand differently. Or you have some misunderstanding about God that I want to help you to share my experience with you about, so that it might help you in your understanding of who God is and kind of break up the soil, the hardness of your heart. And one of the ways I can do this is just by sharing some correct information or some truth with you that may or may not cultivate your heart. And I try and do that. So that's the first thing a farmer does, right? Before even planting any seed, the soil gets cultivated. I call this looking for teachable moments. There are always moments, and parents, this is a great lesson on just parenting as well. There are times in life where there are just teachable moments with our kids, and good parents seize those teachable moments. I'll give you an example. One, when my kids were little, actually, I was out in the backyard. My mother-in-law was planting, doing some spring planting. It was in May, and she was working in a bed outside their house. They had some landscaping trees, and they were planting some flowers, and it was a raised bed, and the girls were out. I've got 3 nieces and 2 daughters are out in the yard, so I'm surrounded by women at this point, and they're all out there in the yard, and they're playing, and my mother-in-law is in the working, gardening, and all of a sudden she jumps back and screams from the bed, and she starts to run away from it and screaming. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened, and she's like, snake, 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 So I immediately run over to where the snake is, right? I'm like, where, where can I find it, And I find, sure enough, there's a little green garter snake just poking his head up out of the weeds, and I grab him, and he's about this long and about this big around, and he's a real menacing looking little guy. So I grab him, and I'm holding him, and my mother-in-law is running further and further away from me at this point. They've got like 5 acres, so she's way over there. And then I call the girls over, and I say, girls, come here and look at this. So all my nieces, my 3 nieces and my daughters come around me, and they're like, oh, cool, Dad, what is that? And it's like, well, this is a garter snake, and we had this little teachable moment, right? And they touch the snake, and they're like, oh, this isn't so bad. I think about that, and I think about how our responses and our reactions, sometimes people look at Christians as like, oh, there's a Christian, stay away, run away. But what I was doing was saying to these young women as they were growing up, not all snakes are bad. Now there are some that you got to be aware of, but this one, this is good. This is a good snake, And I think sometimes when we're being a witness, we're taking teachable moments, we're saying to people, yeah, I know there's some venomous Christians out there in the world, but they're not all bad. There are good ones. And I got to take those moments to tell people of God's goodness, of God, how good God has been in my life. And sometimes that's how we cultivate. Those teachable moments are places to cultivate. The other times, though, the next thing, if we know the soil of someone's heart is ready, then it's time to plant the seed. Once the soil is prepared, then it becomes time to offer the seed and plant the seed and invite the seed into someone else's life that it might grow. And so we ask, Ashley, sometimes I ask people, do you want God in your life? Do you want to know Jesus Christ? Do you want to be a follower of Jesus? Do you want God to work in you? Do you want to accept God's grace for yourself? And they will say yes. And then we talk and we pray together, and it's like I feel like I'm just putting this seed into their soul that I know God's going to grow. I don't grow it. It's not my job. My job is just to give the seed away, right? To invite, to give away that seed. Jesus said, when he sent his disciples out, he said that when you go into a town, he said this, actually, it's in one of the verses here in Luke. He says, whatever house you enter, first say, peace be to this house. And if a son of peace is there, your peace will rest upon him, but if not, it will return to you. He later goes on in that passage to say, and if there's no person of peace in that town, shake the dust off your feet and go to another town. Which is a wise way of saying, if no one is receptive, if the person is not receptive to receiving the seed, walk away. It's okay. Go find somebody who is ready to receive it. Go talk to somebody who is prepared, who is ready, who is available, who wants to know about God's grace. He's basically saying there are going to be people you're going to encounter that will never accept this. They can't, for whatever reason, they may not ever be able to accept it. It's not your job to force feed it into them. It's not your job to shove it into the soil of their heart when they're rejecting it. Just it's okay to walk away. It's not your job. So find the people of peace. Find the people that are open to having that discussion. Find the people that are open to faith and share your experience with them. And so that's where we plant those seeds. And then the last thing we do is that even if we have good soil and you and I have accepted God's grace, we've got the seed in us, even as a Christian, even as a follower of Jesus, there are times I still need to grow. I still need encouragement even as a pastor or as a Christian. And there are times where we need to encourage growth. And so sometimes sharing my faith with other people of faith is like watering them. It's encouraging growth. It's helping them to grow. And I know that when sometimes in our circles here at Glenmar, we'll sit around in a meeting and say, how have you seen God at work in your life this week? And people will share how they've seen God at work in their life. And it's like somebody just watered my soul, Hearing other people share about God just is like encouraging me in my own faith as I hear what God is doing in the lives of others. And so sometimes we need to share our faith with other Christians to help remind them and encourage them to continue to grow in their own faith. And so that's a part of our witness as well. And yet we need to be witnesses for all different types of people, right? Not just people who already have the seed, sometimes people who are hard, sometimes people who are ready, sometimes people who are already growing. We need to be consistent witnesses to whoever we meet. And so I want to challenge you to also think about if you see God do something in your life, or you become aware of something that God is doing in your life, share it with somebody. Or write it down in your journal. Or offer it to somebody. Just say, here's what God's doing in my life. Just share that with somebody. And if that happens to you this week, just do that. Just take that opportunity. And I would say to you, because there are people all around us every day that are probably at one of these places in their life. Sometimes I meet people who are hard against the faith. Sometimes I meet people who are ready to hear more. And sometimes I meet other Christians that also need a word of encouragement. So there are people all around us all the time. How many people like standing in line at the grocery store? I identify with the person last in this line, right? That's me with the purse. It must be a man purse, but so standing in line, last one in the line. It's a long line. So before my wife's grandfather passed away, we called him Pop Pop. He was a widower, and he lived in Philadelphia, by the way, where you get good cheesesteaks. We were in Philly, went up to see him, and he couldn't drive anymore, so I took him to the store one day, and we were getting, the man, I call them the man items. There's a man list, and man just goes in and gets like certain things and then leaves, and so we had our man list of, the toilet paper, the milk, the eggs, the, whatever meat, you needed or whatever. So, and then we had like 5 items, and we're getting ready to head out of the grocery store, me and Pop Pop, and I look over at, this was back in the day when it was 10 items or less. I know they've changed the numbers. 10 items or less line in the grocery store. One person in the 10 items or less line, right, checking out. There's another long line, people with carts full of groceries over in this line. And I say to Pop, I start walking towards the express lane. And Pop Pop's not coming with me. And I'm going, Pop, come on, it's over here. And then he's like, and he's kind of doing this like, no, and I go over to Pop Pop and I say, that line only got one person. It's the express lane. We can get right through. We get right out of here. And he goes, no, I don't want to get in that line. And I'm like, so I explain it to him again, wondering if he heard everything that I said. I explain it to him again. I say, Pop Pop, we can get through this a lot quicker if we go over to this line at the express lane, and we'll get right through and everything. And he says, I don't want to go in that line. We're going in that line. And that's when this whole phrase that I was taught growing up says, respect your elders, kicks in, And so I didn't force the issue. I said, okay, Papa, we'll do it your way. And so I walk over and we get in line, and I'm thinking, he just wants to talk to me some more and da-da-da-da. So we're sitting there, and sure enough, Pop starts to talk to me, and he goes, you see that lady at the cash register? He says, every time I come in this grocery store, I get in her line. Because every time I come through, she asks me about my faith. And I want to share my faith with her. She wants to know more. And so I'll wait in this line as long as it takes so that I can share my faith. Oh. You see, discipleship is not about what's convenient. It's about where are people wanting to know about God's grace. That's my job as a disciple. My job is to be a witness to the good things that God has done in my life. Amen.